to go live. Takes about a minute.
Remember to smile, everyone, as well, especially you, Christopher.
And we are now preparing to go live.
Okay, well, thank you to everyone who's joining us for the first of our Ask Greenwich sessions. My name is Councillor Danny Thorpe, I'm the leader of the council, and we're delighted that you have joined us today. There's been so much going on these past few weeks and months as this pandemic has unfolded. This is our way, and one of the ways that we've tried to connect to residents and engage and listen to your concerns and hopefully address them as well. For those people who are joining us on YouTube today, welcome, and I would encourage anyone who wants to add a question in the comment section so that we can pick that up as we move through the session, and I will be bringing you in to do that as well. I'd now like to introduce my two special guests today, who are my council colleagues and friends, Councillor Denise Scott-McDonald, who is our Deputy Leader of the Council, looking after economy and skills, and my ward colleague and Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Councillor Chris Kirby. So Denise, can I hand over to you first to say hello?
Hi, my name is, as Danny said, Denise, and I'm in the next room beside Danny, not in the deputy leader's room. I've been a councillor since 2014. My ward is the Peninsula ward, which is in the west of the borough. I've also held different positions on the council, including public health, including transport, and as well as the community groups. My current portfolio is economy and skills, and maybe just like some of you, when COVID happened, when I walked down the high street and I saw so many shops closed and the high street empty, I knew that we had to do something to make things happen for the residents of Greenwich. So my portfolio is really important, especially for our local business. We are a borough that has a very high number of small businesses, and that's businesses below the number of 9 employees. But not only that, we also have a lot of people who work in our borough and need jobs, and that's what's going to be really important in my portfolio moving forward in this COVID era. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. And now I'd like to introduce Chris.
Thanks, Dan. I'm Councillor Chris Kirby. As Danny said, I'm his ward colleague from Shooters Hill. I'm now the Cabinet Member for Finance, and basically my big job at the moment is to help us manage the finances given the huge challenge we're facing thanks to COVID-19 coronavirus. Not only have we got, obviously, to support the local care sector, we've got to manage our core services like bin collection, when there's pressure on our staff. We've also got to have an eye on the future. And as we come out of the crisis, one of my jobs is making sure that we maximise the money that we can spend in the local economy to support local people back into work in a really meaningful way.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris. So we'll get underway now with our first questions, and thank you to everyone who has sent them in. The first question that we've received is from Sarah in Shooters Hill, and Sarah's question is, how has coronavirus affected the council's finances, and will you have to make cuts to services? So Chris, can I hand that one over to you, please?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and thanks, Sarah, for the question. Yesterday, actually under duress in the end, the government published a study that highlighted that the impact of coronavirus has disproportionately affected people from BAME communities. And I don't think that was news to us really here. We know that for 10 years, the effects of government austerity have hit the poorest hardest. And now coronavirus has come along and hit the poorest hardest as well. And as a council, despite all the challenges we've got, it's our utmost priority to protect people on lower incomes and people who have been disproportionately affected by this tragic pandemic. We have had 2 tranches of central government money that total about £17 million. Our projected spend for this year on coronavirus is between 40 and 50 million pounds. So that's a huge difference, a huge gap that needs to be made up. We're pushing central government for more money. It's unclear whether that will be forthcoming. The government have been, frankly, quite political in the way they've allocated money. The last tranche of funding saw us get a lower amount than we got in the first tranche of funding, and money was taken out of inner city areas and sent to sort of, frankly, Tory-dominated county shires, which, given, as I mentioned earlier, the disproportionate impact on poorer people and BAME communities is scandalous. And so we have huge challenges. We have seen 2,300 people cancel their council tax direct debit. We've seen huge numbers of people sign on to universal credit. In one day alone, we had 280 people register for universal credit, and that's out of all proportion with anything we had ever seen before. Finances are tough at the moment. We need the government to step in with more money. And until we know, frankly, whether the government will be providing more support to local councils, it's unclear what actions we're going to need to take. We are making sure that, as far as possible, we protect frontline services, and that's in spite of falling council tax business rate money coming in, and it's in spite of fees and charges not coming in. So we need the government to step up. And Danny, you wanting to come in, Dan?
Yeah, great. I mean, I think the key message that I think we'd give to all residents is that the cost of this projected over a year would be about £50 million to Greenwich. And if we've had £17 million in from the government, it doesn't take an A-level maths student to work out that we are short on £33 million. Now, just to give you some idea of the kind of calculations that we have to face, is when we raise council tax and consider, there's all sorts of issues around whether that's a good thing or the necessary thing to do. We've been required to do it for the past few years by the government in order to fund the adult social care gap that's existed. But for every 1% that council tax goes up in the borough, that gives you about £800,000. Now, you can only go up by 4% without having to do a referendum. And obviously we recognise that it is people's hard-earned money, and we don't want to be raising council tax because it's actually a very unfair system, and we recognise the impact that has. But even if you went up by 4%, and that gave you £3.2 million or thereabouts for the year, we'd still be down £30 million. So I think what we are saying very clearly is, at the start of this crisis, I was on calls with the Secretary of State, who told us very clearly they'd be standing by our sides, by council sides, up and down the land as we responded to this completely unique challenge and event. And they absolutely need to do that, because an additional £30 million worth of cuts on top of the £140 million that we've already seen over this last decade of austerity would be absolutely devastating, and not just for our borough, but also for our residents. So we will keep people updated on the financial situation. Now, we've got a question in here, number 2, from Nikki Jen K 46, who's your Twitter handle. So hello, Nikki. And Nikki's question is, following the sad death of Christine Grice, Councillor Scott-McDonald has been promoted to deputy leader. Is this a permanent position or temporary? And has she been elected to this role or appointed by Labour councillors? Now, obviously, I'd like to say first off, you know, to people who are watching who may have known Christine, that we're all absolutely devastated to lose such a wonderful colleague. And Christine did make a huge contribution to the council. And obviously she's left a huge hole here in not just in the town hall, but kind of in all of our lives. I'm extremely grateful to Denise for stepping up, not just in the aftermath of something so tragic, but at a time, frankly, when leadership has never been more important in a whole range of areas. Denise has been appointed by me, as a lot of the appointments actually are in my name, through the council's constitution, and we will have our own internal processes as a political group which we'd consider. But I just want to say how great it is to be working with Denise, who has really hit the ground running and done a fantastic job and brings a whole wealth of experience to this role from the portfolios that she has been engaged in. Denise is one of the country's leading cooperative councillors, actually, and does a lot of work with the Co-op Party, and you know, is someone who's already provided me with just the most enormous support at this incredibly challenging time. So Denise, do you still want to do it? Can we,
I mean, Christine was a good friend, and it was awful how quickly everything went there, and it deeply impacted me, and I know many of our colleagues. But you know, I enjoy being a councillor, and it's been an incredible privilege serving on the cabinet, not just under Danny's leadership, but Denise. And then when Danny asked me, you know, I thought about it, and I thought that it's a good time to help out. And it's a really important time, especially with COVID and a lot of things hitting our communities. I felt like it was really important that I stepped up to the plate and do my duty. I know it sounds really corny and silly, but that's how I saw it, doing my duty, and that's what I do. So.
Okay, well, amazing, and thanks. And do follow Denise on Twitter, people, as well, if you're not doing so already. Now, question number 3 comes from one of our regular critics, Mervyn in Plumstead, who's often got a lot to say about the council. Mervyn's question is 31 of public money still being spent on an arts centre in Woolwich? Denise, can I hand over to you?
Sorry. Right, can you hear me? All right, there are 2 parts to Mervyn's question, actually. It says, is 31 million of public money still being spent on the Arts Centre in Woolwich? And the second part is Melvyn has asked if we think the money spent on the cinema in Eltham was well spent. There were 2 projects I've been involved with in the past. I was previously cabinet member for culture and was very instrumental and played a part in the Woolwich Works, what it's called now, as well as my voice was also involved with the Eltham. Now, in terms of Woolwich work, work has already begun. Work has been going on, construction work. Actually, they've brought a lot of, over 100 construction jobs to the borough already with the Woolwich Works project. And the plan is for them to bring even 400 more jobs. So the project is going to continue. Right now, it's a bit of a standstill because of the whole COVID situation, but the project will continue because it's going to bring over 400 jobs in the area. Around 70% of the space is already out to be hired by local organisation and community groups. Now, in terms of Eltham, Eltham again, one of our important local community and town centres, just like Woolwich is very important, as well as Woolwich Work important in that area. Eltham, again, cinema is very important. The cinema project already has created lots of jobs. We were seeing increase in the footfall on the high street. There were more people spending money. We do have evidence at Nando's and Pizza Express. We're seeing uptake in business. And I think in this time, you know, there's so many layoffs and so much furlough. I do think it's important that we need to prioritise jobs and jobs for our local community, whether those jobs will be in Woolwich or in Eltham or across the borough, and people from across the borough will want to play a part in what's going on in Woolwich as well as what's going on in Eltham on the High Street.
Thanks a lot for that, Denise. And that mention of Nando's has just reminded me of what we're really missing in this lockdown. And I, for one, can't wait to get back to some peri-peri action when it comes. And if Nando's are listening in, then please get the Woolwich store open as quickly as possible. Right, let's move on now to question 4. Question 4 is, Chris, lots of people have asked us about council tax increases. So I guess, can you reassure people about that? And also, what would you say to anyone who's experiencing difficulty in perhaps paying their council tax at the moment?
Yeah, so the first thing to say, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Dan, is that each household in the borough has effectively lost £1,500 of central government funding over the last 10 years. And that's a huge impact on our budget, on the way we are able to deliver services. We have in 8 years running, we froze council tax, which means that we've still got some of the lowest council tax in London. But we do now face increased challenges, especially around social care and adult services. And part of the strategy of the government has been, rather than kind of get to grips and create a national solution to the social care crisis, has been to try and force councils to pay for it by increasing resident council tax, which is a regressive tax and an unfair way to fund a service. But it is the way that government have chosen to do it. So that's the choice that we've been faced with. We raised council tax last year. I think unless the government, as I mentioned earlier, come forward with new tranches of money around coronavirus, we would have to very seriously consider raising council tax this year as well, as frankly the only financial prudent choice available to us. If people are worried about council tax or any other payment to the council, they should get in touch with us immediately. And a member of the team will talk them through the support that's available to them. In the last budget, we took action to increase council tax support to some of the lowest earners in the borough, and so that support is there if people need it.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris. Okay, moving on now to another question from Mervyn, slightly angrier one this time. It says, council tax goes up and services cut, but can you still justify spending £600,000 converting a toilet into a cafe? And is this not a misappropriation of public money? Denise, would you like to say something about this project? It's obviously it's in mine and Chris's ward, so we've got a different perspective. Denise? We can't, sorry Denise, you're on mute. We'll get the hang of this eventually, everyone.
Oh God. All right, so could you repeat the question again, please, Danny, for me?
So I think on the whole issue of the slate toilets,
Yeah.
I guess really, I mean, Mervyn has raised this project as one example. I guess what would you say about your experience of, I guess, projects like that and projects that the council have done to sort of directly intervene in an area?
I mean, I think for me, it's jobs, it's investment, it's local investment into the local community. It's also, I know this is a buzzword, it's also about placemaking. And from my understanding, I've only been to the cafe once. And even then, when I went there, it was really wonderful to see the local people coming together, meeting there as a community. But at the same time, I saw people working around the counter, and you know, and those jobs are really important to the borough. And I do think it's really, I mean, Greenwich as a borough, we do have small businesses and small operations, and we do need to support them, and we do need to look out for them, because they're gonna, the big government pot of money which we hear about, a lot of times are not filtering down to those smaller companies or smaller organizations or projects like this. So I do think it's really important that we continue to fund projects like this, obviously with some scrutiny and level of monitoring what's going on and making sure it brings back what we want it to bring back.
Absolutely, and I think interestingly, we've had a comment online from Sasha, who's been actually asking about Plumstead and Plumstead High Street. And I would just say that one of the things I really felt and heard a lot when I was the cabinet member for regeneration was that Plumstead was the forgotten part of the borough. It was very ignored, and actually we worked really hard to address that as a council, because we wouldn't want any part of our borough to be feeling that way. It certainly was not a deliberate choice from anyone. And certainly I worked very hard with a whole range of people, and we secured over £5 million of investment for the Good Growth Fund coming in to the High Street. The interesting thing I think about Plumstead is Plumstead isn't actually defined as one place, and you can talk to people who you may think live in Shooters Hill, who will say that their home is in Plumstead, and Plumstead Common does, I guess, cover a very wide area. And as Denise said, it's not just about the jobs, but it's also about the local economy. And actually, it's fantastic to see the Slade Cafe being so busy whenever you go past it, really. I mean, it's often standing room only, and fantastic that the council has been able to make a small intervention in an area to support that kind of boost. And we'd want to do the same again in different areas. If you are online and you've got a good suggestion about where to go, then by all means get in touch with us and we will take that one up. Now, question 6 comes from Candice on Facebook, and I just want to answer this one directly before bringing Chris in. So Candice says, can council workers get back to work so we can start some sort of normality? Well, Candice, just to be clear, the council and many of its workers have been here since the start of this pandemic, and actually doing huge amounts of work, 24/7 operations, as we have been responding to this. So what, if there's someone that you're particularly looking for, then do let us know. But actually, I want to pay tribute to all of the council staff and staff from across Greenwich, actually, in all of our public sector organisations, who've been truly phenomenal in the challenges that we face. Chris, do you want to add anything, as you also lead on HR?
Yeah, I do. I know Candice from the Borough-wide Tenants Panel. So hello, Candice, and thank you for your question. Just to echo Dan's point, really, that our staff have been absolutely tremendous. I think it's worth just talking about some of the circumstances that our staff have faced. So some will obviously be shielding, some will have had coronavirus, some will have family members that are kind of vulnerable. So it's been difficult, and we've worked really hard with our staff and actually with our trade unions as well to make sure that we run as effective a service as we can in this time. I'm guessing Candice might have been asking about, might have been thinking about caretakers and staff on estates when she asked the question. And obviously, because of, especially at the height of the original part of the outbreak, we had fewer staff, and we had to really focus on communal areas where coronavirus may have been spread. And so we sort of redefined what our staff on estates did. But in a lot of areas, they've been running sort of near to a full service. That's obviously not been possible everywhere. So Candice, if there's somewhere that you're particularly concerned about, I would recommend you drop your councillor a note, and we can find out what's going on specifically there. Just generally, in answer to your question, as soon as it is safe for our staff to come back, then they'll be brought back as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Chris. And just a couple of things I'd like to add in there. So Chris just mentioned safety, which is really paramount. And prior to this, obviously all of our buildings were kind of open access, and people were kind of, would regularly be in their hundreds, for example, in the Woolwich Centre. Now, obviously, with the social distancing requirements and to protect staff, that's not possible at the moment, but it's also a massive opportunity for all of you as residents to explore what we can do online, because actually so many of our services are available online. And whilst we recognise that some people really value a kind of face-to-face contact, at the moment we need everyone to help us by not adding pressure to those services, certainly at the front door, really. So please bear with us. And a question is coming from Naomi actually about the registrar service, and obviously at the moment it's only registrations of deaths which are happening. So we hope that will change soon. Please keep checking our website, and that will we'll update as soon as we can about that. And just to share one example of many of the amazing things that have happened, and I say amazing in the loosest sense of the word, because I guess the hard thing about coronavirus has been where good things come out of absolute tragedy and terrible things. Actually, one of our registrars was able to perform a deathbed wedding to somebody who was about to lose their life. Obviously, we've had to liaise with the National Registrar Service about that. But it's just one of the most exceptional things, really, I've heard about where people have gone above and beyond that extra mile at the moment in order to deliver a service that people wanted. So I guess just we may not be clapping on Thursday nights anymore or banging pots and pans out of the windows, but please, let's bear in mind, I think, that actually all of our workers have been phenomenal in this crisis. Question 7 now, moving on to Mary. Mary, hello Mary. So Mary's question, Denise, is will there be more or less jobs because of COVID-19?
Gosh, I wish I had a crystal ball for this question, because, us, like other councils, we've seen massive increase in people applying for universal credit. I know loads of people who are on furlough. I know others, and I'm sure Mary probably does, and all of us all know people who are, don't know if they're going to have a job even after the summer or even next week or so. But what we can do, what we're trying to do here locally is monitor the situation a lot, especially because many of people, I mean, Danny, you talked about when you went to the hub, meeting lots of people and hearing from lots of people who were financially in a very, very hard time. I know what we're doing here in the council is that we're trying to make sure that our local businesses are supported. I sit in meetings where the government's given us funding, and so we sit in meetings and we're looking at different ways we can allocate some of the funding to help with relieving with rent, either suspension of rent or offering free rents. And one of the questions we ask all the time is, how many jobs does this company employ? How many people does this job employ? And just, those are the questions we're asking all the time, not just here in the council. I know that when I meet my counterpart, and I know Danny, when you are meeting your counterparts at the London-wide level, these are the questions we're asking, because it's jobs that will get us back, working again. I'm desperately hoping we won't see less jobs. Hopefully we'll be more creative, but I don't know if Danny, if you wanted to add to that, or to Chris.
Chris has got his hand up, so.
Yeah, I mean, so this is really where the government need to step up. So we've provided rent holidays for local businesses that rent from us. None of that money is guaranteed by the government. We've seen some money for high street, to try and protect high streets and keep people in jobs, but it's all short term. What we're going to do as a council is we obviously procure large contracts. We've got our Greenwich Build scheme that is building a new generation of council homes. We procure other large contracts as well. We're determined to make as much of that money work for local people as possible. So we're looking to work with companies that employ local people, employ local businesses in the supply chain, and try and get people into apprenticeships and jobs that are actually meaningful and well paid. So while we are getting less money and less support from central government, we are determined to do all that we can as we come out of the crisis. And just always in every recession, London is the engine that drives the economy of the rest of the country. And the sooner the government wake up to that, the better. And the sooner that they work with local councils to get the local economy going again, the better it will be for everybody.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. Okay, I'd now also like to move on to question. Sorry, I had a question online from Emma. Emma's asked about her black bin collection, which has been delayed. Sorry to hear that, Emma. It's actually quite unusual at the moment. We're doing very well on waste collection, I have to say. So we'll try and get that resolved for you as soon as possible. And if you do have an issue like that, you can always add in the council's Twitter account at Royal Greenwich, and we will endeavour to get back to you as quickly as possible. So Denise, you mentioned your crystal ball. So for question 8, we may need that. So Lewis from Twitter would like to know when will all the shops on Power Street be open? Do you know?
All right, so according to government guideline, it says high street department stores and shopping will be allowed to reopen on June the 15th. And we're working as a council really just to support businesses in that area as much as possible, because they're going to all have to observe the social distancing rules. But we're also going to be monitoring that, because there are some businesses that will be challenged in that. And as a council, we're trying to monitor all of that and look at that. So yeah, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to get back shopping and doing things like that, even though it'll be a different world anyway.
And also, just to add in, people, particularly in Woolwich and Eltham today, may see changes in the town centre that we are introducing as part of the Street Space London scheme. So obviously, whilst it's great that Denise is going to be able to go shopping from the 15th of June, she's going to have to do that in a different way than she would have done normally, because shops are going to have to impose restrictions, which will mean queues and a reduced number of people in facilities. So we are having to reclaim public space so that there's more space for you to be safe. And certainly we've already had really good feedback on the scheme that we've put in Greenwich Town Centre. And we're also very much trying to talk to people about what other areas that they would like us to consider. And certainly our session next week will include the Council's Cabinet member, Sisway James, who is in charge of transport and the environment, and that will be a great opportunity for you to raise some of those questions with him. A question here now from Jane in Woolwich. So Jane says, what is happening about free travel for kids? So I think I will pick this one up, if you don't mind. Obviously, with all of the issues that have happened around public transport, Transport for London have been really badly hit in terms of the reduced number of people that are travelling. So therefore, the fare income, which accounts for about 90% of the cost of the whole organisation, has pretty much disappeared. As people know, Transport for London got into some trouble because we weren't travelling and had to go to the government and request emergency support. And it's also interesting to note, Jane, that actually London is the only city in Western Europe that does not receive a single penny from the government to help with transport, which in a capital city is fairly shocking. Now, one of the things that the government have forced our Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, to do is, in order to get that money we need to get the capital moving, is to take away free travel for under 18s, which is absolutely shocking. And I want to be absolutely clear that the council totally opposes this. I'd like to thank everyone who signed the petition that I started, for over 7,000 people across Greenwich now who have rightly said, how on earth and why is it fair that actually children, young people and families should be paying the highest price for this coronavirus pandemic. And actually, just from an equalities basis, 40% of all of our kids in Greenwich who live here today grow up in poverty. This will make that worse. There's no doubt about it. So we are being really clear that the government are going to need to close that gap, because not only is it totally unfair, I think, to have done that, but there's also no system in place that we can administer whereby the council could run such a scheme. Certainly, when I was growing up, my brother went to Eaglesfield. He was 3 miles away from school, so he used to get free bus pass to travel there. But actually, that's all changed, and it's worth pointing out actually to people who are listening and asking about council tax and different things, that the estimated cost to Londoners for providing free travel for under 18s would be £17 million. There's no budget to do that at the moment, and actually that would just put extra costs onto ordinary Londoners, and actually I think that's grossly unfair. So thank you very much, Jane, for that question. Now that brings us, I think I'm just going to check online to the end of the questions, which is a bit sad because we were just sort of getting into it actually. So I'll just check my Twitter account quickly. But Chris and Denise, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Sorry, Dan, I think you've actually missed question 9.
Question 9, I did actually, yeah. So, sorry, question 9 is from Billo on Twitter, who's asked about project assistants. And actually, project assistants are 2 members who receive an additional allowance to do specific work. And actually, I'd really pay tribute to all of our councillors here in the town hall who do take up additional responsibilities, because actually there's a lot of work to do to make things happen. At the moment, there aren't any councillors in those posts, so we didn't fill those at the AGM, but it is our intention to do so moving forward. Yes, I don't think we have, I think that's question 9. Yeah, I don't have any more questions unless Chris has seen something that I didn't see. No? Okay. Well, as I said, so the next session of Ask Greenwich will feature 3 cabinet members. So we're going to have myself as the chair, Councillor Sisway James, who looks after environment, sustainability and transport, Councillor Sarah Merrill, who has picked up the work around regeneration and planning, and also Councillor Anthony Okereke, who is our new cabinet member for housing. So housing, regen and transport, as well as the wider sustainability agenda, are really the kind of key areas of focus for next week. So we hope that you can join us then. We hope that this has been enjoyable, and thanks again for taking the time to join. Enjoy the rest of the week.